Of all the weapons that defined the battlefields of World War II, from the thunderous artillery barrages to the screaming Stuka dive bombers, one weapon struck a unique and terrifying chord of fear into the hearts of Allied soldiers. It wasn't the largest or the loudest, but its sound was unmistakable, a sound that became the soundtrack of death on every front from the deserts of North Africa to the forests of the Ardennes. That sound was the ripping canvas, hellish tear of the German MG-42 machine gun. While American GIs carried the reliable but slow-paced M1919 Browning, and the British relied on the Bren gun. The German infantry was built around a weapon so advanced, so brutally efficient, and so fearsome that it forced a complete reevaluation of infantry tactics. The MG-42 wasn't just another machine gun, it was a leap in weapons technology that gave the German soldier a devastating advantage. Its secret wasn't a single mysterious feature, but a combination of revolutionary engineering, doctrinal brilliance, and psychological warfare, all forged into one nearly unstoppable instrument of war. The story of the MG-42 begins with its predecessor, the MG-34. The MG-34 was a masterpiece in its own right, the world's first general-purpose machine gun GPMG. It could be a light machine gun on a bipod, a heavy machine gun on a tripod for sustained fire, an anti-aircraft weapon, and even be mounted on vehicles. But, for all its versatility, the MG-34 had a critical flaw. It was a precision instrument, machined from solid steel with exquisite tolerances. It was expensive, time-consuming to manufacture, and notoriously susceptible to mud, sand, and dust. As the war expanded, Germany needed a machine gun that could be produced faster, cheaper, and could withstand the brutal conditions of the Eastern Front. The answer came from a consortium of designers, notably Dr. Werner Gruner of the state-owned company Grossfuss AG, who had a radical idea. What if, instead of machining parts, they used massive amounts of stamped and pressed steel assembled with spot welds and rivets? To the traditional German ordnance experts, this was heresy. It was cheap. It was crude. It was a step backward in craftsmanship, but it was also a stroke of genius. The resulting weapon, the MG-42, was a masterpiece of simplification without compromise. Where the MG-34 required meticulous hand-fitting, the MG-42's parts were mass-produced and interchangeable. Its cost dropped dramatically, and its production time was slashed. A factory that might have produced one MG-34 in a day could now produce 10 or more MG-42s. But this manufacturing revolution was only half the story. The real terror of the MG-42 lay in its performance, centered on one terrifying characteristic: its rate of fire. The MG-42 could fire at a cyclic rate of 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute, more than twice that of the American Browning and the British Bren gun. This wasn't just a statistical advantage. It was a psychological weapon. The individual reports of other machine guns blended into a steady thump, thump, thump. The MG-42, however, produced a continuous ripping sound, like tearing linoleum or a buzzsaw. Soldiers described it as the Hitler's buzzsaw. This sound alone was often enough to pin down an entire platoon, because any movement, any exposed head, could be obliterated in a split-second burst. A 2 or 3 second burst from an MG-42 meant 40 to 50 rounds were coming down range, creating a near impenetrable wall of lead. This incredible rate of fire was achieved through a revolutionary roller-delayed blowback operating system and a recoil booster on the muzzle that worked in harmony to create an incredibly fast, yet remarkably reliable, action. This blistering rate of fire created a tactical dilemma that the German army had already solved with a sophisticated doctrine. A single MG-42 operated by a well-trained crew became the focal point of the German infantry squad, or Gruppe. While Allied squads were built around riflemen, the German squad was built around the machine gun. The riflemen, armed with Kar 98K bolt-action rifles, were there for one primary purpose: to protect the MG-42 team and to carry its ammunition. The machine gunner, or Schütze, was the most important man in the squad. His job was to lay down suppressive fire, fixing the enemy in place, while the rest of the squad maneuvered. The concept was called Schwerpunktbildung, the concentration of force. The MG-42 was that concentrated force. A defending German position wasn't a line of riflemen. It was a series of interlocking MG-42 killing zones, each gun capable of denying a vast area of the battlefield. Attacking such a position was a nightmare. An infantry charge would be met by a scythe of fire that could cut down dozens of men in seconds. The sound alone told Allied veterans they were facing not just a weapon, but a system. A way of war that was ruthlessly efficient and terrifyingly effective. Missions. Raining death on positions hidden from direct view. This combination of technical excellence and tactical integration made the MG-42 the cornerstone of German infantry power. A weapon that could defensively hold a line against overwhelming odds and offensively shred enemy counterattacks before they could even begin. On the Eastern Front, facing human wave attacks from the Soviet Red Army, the MG-42 earned its grim reputation as a meat grinder. The open terrain was a perfect killing ground for the weapon's long-range accuracy and staggering volume of fire. Soviet commanders, often pressed for time and willing to accept massive casualties, would order frontal assaults across open fields. A single MG-42 positioned in a well-chosen defensive spot could halt such an attack in its tracks. The gun would fire long, scything bursts into the advancing lines, the 1-200 RPM rate of fire meaning that each burst covered a wide, lethal arc. The psychological effect was as destructive as the physical one. New Soviet conscripts, hearing the terrifying rip of the MG-42 for the first time, would often break and run, or freeze in place, becoming easy targets. The gun's reliability in the bitter cold and muddy conditions of Russia was a testament to its robust, simplified design. While other precision weapons seized up, the MG-42, with its looser tolerances and direct operating system, kept firing. In the West, American and British troops developed a deep, respectful fear of the weapon they called Hitler's Buzzsaw, or the Spandau, a misnomer based on the manufacturer's code. Veterans learned to distinguish its sound from their own machine guns instantly. They developed tactics based not on overpowering it, but on outflanking it or calling in artillery or mortars, because a direct assault was often tantamount to suicide. The MG-42 forced a fundamental change in how the Allies fought. It taught them that courage alone was not enough against a weapon of such concentrated, efficient firepower. It was a tool that gave a single German soldier the power to dominate a battlefield, and it remains one of the most influential and feared infantry weapons ever created. The psychological impact of the MG-42 cannot be overstated. It was a weapon that waged war on the mind as much as the body. For the Allied soldier, the battlefield was audibly divided into two realities: the familiar reports of his own side's weapons, and the terrifying, unnatural rip of the buzzsaw. This sound became a constant source of anxiety, a auditory marker of death that could freeze a man in his tracks. Veterans recalled that the sound of an MG-42, even from a great distance, would instantly make them crouch lower in their foxholes. It conditioned a generation of soldiers to associate that specific frequency of violence with imminent danger. This psychological warfare was an unintended but powerful side effect of the gun's mechanical design. Where a slower machine gun offered discernible pauses, moments where a soldier might risk a sprint between cover, the MG-42's fire was a nearly continuous stream. It created the illusion that no safe moment existed, that to raise one's head was to invite instant dismemberment. This often caused advancing infantry to become pinned down more effectively, not because the gunner had actually seen them, but because the sheer volume of fire made movement seem suicidal. The gun's reputation preceded it, and new replacements were briefed on its sound before they ever heard it. Their fear pre-programmed. This gave the German defender a disproportionate advantage. Often, the mere suspicion of an MG-42's presence was enough to slow an Allied advance to a crawl, buying precious time for reinforcements to arrive or for a withdrawal to be organized. The Allies, for all their industrial might, had no direct answer to the MG-42. They could not simply replicate it. The entire manufacturing and doctrinal philosophy was different. The American response was typically pragmatic, overwhelming firepower. If you couldn't outshoot the MG-42 with a comparable weapon, you had to destroy its position with something bigger. This led to increased reliance on supporting arms. Mortar teams became the primary tool for dealing with a dug-in MG-42 nest. A forward observer would pinpoint the general location of the gun by the sound and the tracer fire, and a mortar crew would drop high-explosive rounds on the position. Artillery barrages were also called in to saturate suspected machine gun positions before an assault. On a smaller scale, infantry units adapted their tactics. They learned to use covering fire from their own, slower-firing Brownings and bars not to suppress the MG-42, directly a nearly impossible task, but to keep the German riflemen's heads down while maneuver elements, often using smoke grenades for concealment, would desperately try to flank the position. The Bren gun crews of the British forces developed a specific technique of firing short, aimed bursts to try and force the MG-42 crew to keep their heads down during the critical barrel-changing moment. But these were all countermeasures, reactions to the German initiative. The MG-42 had forced the Allies into a defensive, reactive tactical posture at the small unit level. It was a testament to the weapon's design that it dictated the terms of engagement on countless battlefields across Europe. The legacy of the MG-42 did not end with the fall of Nazi Germany. Its revolutionary design was so effective that it became the direct ancestor of nearly every modern general-purpose machine gun in the Western world. After the war, the newly formed West German Army, the Bundeswehr, needed a new standard machine gun. They took the MG-42 and chambered it in the standard NATO 7.62 51 mm round, creating the MG-1, which was later refined into the iconic MG-3. The MG-3 remains in service with Germany and numerous other countries to this day, a testament to the timelessness of the original design. The roller-delayed blowback system and the philosophy of high rate of fire, quick-change barrels, and mass production became the new global standard. The American M60 machine gun, while a different mechanical design, heavily borrowed the MG-42's concept of a general-purpose weapon and its overall form factor. The lasting impact of the MG-42 is that it successfully defined the role and capabilities of the modern squad automatic weapon and sustained fire machine gun. It proved that reliability and volume of fire were more important in a general-purpose weapon than pinpoint accuracy or meticulous craftsmanship. The sound that once terrorized the fields of Normandy and the steppes of Russia now echoes on modern training grounds wherever its descendants are fired. A lasting tribute to one of the most formidable and influential infantry weapons ever conceived. It was a weapon that was almost unstoppable, not because of magic, but because of a cold, brutal efficiency that changed the very nature of infantry combat forever. The end of the Second World War did not spell the end of the MG-42's story. In many ways, it was only the beginning of its global legacy. As Allied technicians scoured defeated Germany for technological secrets, the MG-42 was universally recognized not as a relic of a vanquished foe, but as a blueprint for the future. Its design was so profoundly correct that the newly formed West German Bundeswehr, needing to rearm in the 1950s, simply returned to the weapon they knew was superior. They took the original MG-42 plans and made the most logical modification. They rechambered it for the standard NATO 7.62 51mm cartridge. This new version was initially designated the MG-1, and through a series of incremental improvements, evolved into the legendary MG-3, which remains in service with the German military and over 30 other nations to this day. The changes were minimal, a slightly reduced rate of fire to a more manageable 1/100 to 1/300 rounds per minute, a chrome-lined barrel for even greater longevity, and adjustments to accommodate NATO ammunition belts. The soul of the weapon, however, remained utterly intact. The same ripping sound, the same lightning-quick barrel change, the same devastating suppressive power. The MG-3 is a testament to the fact that the engineers of the 1940s had, in essence, perfected the concept of the general-purpose machine gun. It is a living fossil, a direct link to the battlefields of World War II that is still capable of dominating a modern battlefield. The influence of the MG-42, however, extended far beyond direct copies. It fundamentally rewrote the design philosophy for machine guns across the globe. Before the MG-42, many military establishments still viewed machine guns as either precision tools for long-range engagement or as specialized heavy weapons. The MG-42 demonstrated the overwhelming tactical value of a high rate of fire for area suppression and psychological effect. You can see its DNA in the belt-fed, quick-change barrel design of the American M60, even if the M60's execution was flawed. More clearly, you see it in the Belgian FN Mag, which became the American M240. The MAGI took the GPMG concept pioneered by the MG-34 and refined by the MG-42, a weapon that could be a squad automatic weapon on a bipod and a sustained fire weapon on a tripod, and created what is arguably the other pinnacle of the genre. The Soviet Union, having borne the brutal brunt of the MG-42, developed its own response in the PK machine gun family. While mechanically different, the PK's role as the squad-level GPMG, its reliability, and its doctrine of use were direct answers to the lesson taught by the Hitler's Buzzsaw. The world had learned that the German approach to machine gun design and deployment was correct, and the MG-42 was the definitive model. The ultimate proof of the MG-42's revolutionary status is that it rendered its own predecessors and contemporaries obsolete. The beautifully machined but finicky MG-34 was completely overshadowed and relegated to secondary roles. The American M1919 Browning, a rock-solid and reliable weapon, was shown to be tactically limited by its slow rate of fire and inability to quickly change its barrel. The British Bren gun, accurate and beloved by its users was a magazine-fed light machine gun that simply could not put the same volume of fire downrange. The MG-42's combination of staggering firepower, unmatched reliability, and revolutionary ease of manufacturing created a new benchmark that every subsequent machine gun has been measured against. It was not an incremental improvement. It was a paradigm shift. It proved that in the chaos of infantry combat, the ability to instantly create a wall of lead was more valuable than single-shot accuracy. It demonstrated that a weapon built with stamped metal could be more robust and dependable than one crafted from a solid block of steel. The MG-42 was almost unstoppable because it was more than a weapon. It was a perfect and terrifyingly effective idea. An idea so powerful that it continues to shape the tools and tactics of armies around the world 8 decades after it first screamed onto the battlefield. The true measure of the MG-42's genius lies not just in its immediate battlefield dominance, but in its enduring philosophical legacy. It represented a fundamental shift in how a nation at war could think about industrial production and infantry doctrine in tandem. The stamped metal construction wasn't just a cost-cutting measure, it was a strategic insight. It acknowledged that the war would be won not by the most exquisitely crafted weapons, but by the most numerous and reliable ones. This philosophy of designing for mass production and ruggedness without sacrificing performance became a cornerstone of post-war military-industrial thinking. The MG-42 proved that quality and quantity were not mutually exclusive, but could be engineered into a single, devastatingly effective system. This lesson was absorbed not only by arms manufacturers but by entire military establishments, who saw that a weapon's value was determined as much by its ability to be produced in the tens of thousands as by its performance on the test range. Furthermore, the MG-42 codified the concept of the general-purpose machine gun as the irreplaceable heart of the infantry squad. Before it, the roles of the light and heavy machine gun were often separate. The MG-42 fused these roles, giving a small unit the ability to project sustained, heavy firepower that could pivot instantly from a mobile assault to an anchored defense. This flexibility forced every modern army to reconsider the organization of its most basic fighting unit. The American shift from the M1919 to the M60 and later the M249 SAW, and the Soviet development of the RPK and PK machine guns were all evolutionary steps driven by the same tactical problem the MG-42 had so effectively solved: how to give a fire team or squad an organic, overwhelming base of fire. The German Gruppe built around the MG-42 became the model, the template that others sought to emulate. This doctrinal shift was perhaps the MG-42's most profound victory. It didn't just kill soldiers, it killed an outdated way of organizing and thinking about infantry combat. Today, when a modern soldier shoulders an M240 or a PKM, they are connecting with the legacy of the MG-42, the feel of the weapon, the concept of the quick-change barrel, the understanding of the machine gun as the squad's primary killer. All these principles were decisively established by that German weapon of World War II. Its sound may no longer be heard in anger on the battlefields of Europe, but its echo is permanently embedded in the training manuals, the unit structures, and the very metal of the machine guns carried by soldiers across the globe. The MG-42 was almost unstoppable because it was a perfect synthesis of form, function, and doctrine. It was the right weapon, at the right time, built the right way, and used in the right manner. Its story is a powerful reminder that in the brutal calculus of war, The most formidable weapons are those that are not only deadly in themselves, but that force the enemy to change the way they fight, and in doing so, change the face of war itself forever.